Now, I try to refrain from putting myself in a position where I fantasize about being the God Emperor of a racing series or just racing in general, because generally speaking, I look at it from the perspective of if anyone ever put me in charge of a racing series, it would be an incredible, amazing 2 months of racing, and then the series I would be put in charge of would go bankrupt. But I decided since I was really critical of this year's IndyCar schedule, to kind of fantasize and craft a 17 race calendar that I think would check a lot of boxes and still in some ways be somewhat realistic to achieve. Now, is it totally realistic? Probably not, but that's kind of the fun of a fantasy schedule, to try to put together something that you could see happening, but probably would never actually take place. Now, the reason this video is possible, and you may have already noticed it, it's glasses. Felix Gray glasses. Now, I don't know if you guys have ever noticed on overcast days, you might feel lethargic, you might feel kind of sluggish, lack motivation. Well, there's a very specific reason for that, believe it or not, and it is called blue light. Now, blue light is produced by the sun, and it tells our body a very simple command. Wake up, it's time to smell the coffee, it's time to get going. Now, the problem with blue light is when it comes from unnatural sources and is highly concentrated. Now, when does that happen? Well, it happens when we stare at screens. And I don't know if you guys have noticed, but in our current society, we stare at screens quite a bit. I know I do it quite a bit, just in general editing, but also, phone screens, tablets. You've got it in your face all day long, and that's terrible for you. Our eyes weren't meant to look at screens all day. It messes with our internal balance, it affects our sleep, causes stress, headaches, blurry vision, and general eye fatigue. Now, how do you combat that? Well, you combat that with a pair of Felix Gray blue light lenses. Now, these glasses filter 15 times more blue light from screens than those other conventional blue light glasses you might get on some big box retail. You don't want to do that. You don't want to mess with that. The original optical lenses relieve most eye strain symptoms from daily screen time, and the more advanced sleep glasses relieve serious daily eye strain and were especially designed for late night screen time to improve sleep. Now, Felix Gray glasses are hand finished from Italian acetate, making them super lightweight, durable, and super comfortable. Now, I picked out the Midnight Surf version of the Carver, and I think they look pretty good. They complement my eyes. They even complement the blue on my shirt. I think they present very well, especially on camera. Blue light lenses come starting standard at $95, or you can add your prescription starting at $145. If you don't love your glasses in the first 30 days, their in-house customer care team will take care of exchanges and returns. No hassle, no questions asked. Get yourself a pair of glasses designed for the 21st century and designed for a pair of hard-working eyes. You've got nothing to lose, except for maybe eye strain. Show your eyes some love with Felix Gray glasses. Link to them is in the description below, and I encourage you to check them out. Now, my fantasy IndyCar schedule would still begin in Florida. I think it's a perfect state to start the IndyCar season in, but I also think that the St. Petersburg Grand Prix, unfortunately, where it's dated and its traditional date is just too late. NASCAR will have been going on for like 2 months at that point, and although Formula One starts a lot later in the year, they also go further in the year. IndyCar tends to stop well before October. So how do you combat that? Well, you start the season earlier. And my suggestion would be to start at Homestead Miami Speedway. That accomplishes a few things. You start on an oval track. I think that would appeal to a lot of traditional fans. I think it would be an exciting race to start the season. And you have a lot more control over where the date is. And hopefully you do it maybe even as late as late February, just to try to get as quick a bang to start the season as you could. And then you can also lead straight into St. Petersburg. So maybe you could do some sort of a deal with Homestead Miami, where if you buy a ticket to Homestead, you can get half off a ticket to St. Petersburg, or just in general, having the first two races in Florida, I think would be really helpful. The other thing, of course, would be from a team perspective, you could host, and this has actually been talked about, in addition to the fact that Homestead Miami has been rumored itself, is that you could host spring training at Homestead Miami. They used to do that. So you could have the testing at Homestead, you could have the first race at Homestead, and then the second race in St. Petersburg in mid to late March. And I think that would help the flow of the series a lot better. And the closer you can get the start of the IndyCar season to the week after the Daytona 500, I think that's when you want to start the season, if at all possible. Because once the Daytona 500 is over, I think people kind of jump off the hype train of NASCAR a little bit, because I always notice this. Like the first race, everybody's hyped, everybody's excited. Daytona 500 ends, and then the next race, you look at even the TV ratings, they dip. So to take advantage of some of that, why not put on an alternative product on an oval? That's why I suggest Homestead. So Homestead, then St. Pete, then we go on to the traditional races at Barber Motorsports Park. No reason to change that. Traditional race at Long Beach. Even though we haven't seen it as a season finale yet, I don't think the promoters are necessarily going to want to keep it as a season finale. I think it's going to be a fun one-off experiment, but I don't think we're going to be seeing that continue. IndyCar Grand Prix in May. This was a tough one to work out, because I think you guys know that I'm not necessarily the biggest fan of Indy cars on the IMS road course, but I go back and forth on this, and I decided to keep it on the schedule, and I decided to keep it in May, because I also considered moving it to the Brickyard weekend, but I definitely thought that there only needs to be one IndyCar race on the IMS road course. That's one thing I did determine in my kind of idea. I think you only need one, and I think you should move it up a week. And I'll explain why you move it up a week in a second. But I think the very, very first week of May, there should be cars on the Indianapolis Motor Speedway. And that's a way you can have a full month of May again, is have the road course race the very first week of May, get it out early, essentially take the Texas date from this year and make that the IndyCar GP. Well, now you may be asking, David, what are you going to do with the rest of May? Well, we're going to do 2 weeks of practice again. Now, we're not going to do 2 full weeks. I wanted to be realistic about this. But I do think that we have been insanely lucky the last few years where there hasn't been significant rain affecting practice for the Indianapolis 500. And that those practice sessions for the Indianapolis 500 are not just, because everybody always makes the argument when you say, well, let's add practice days. Well, they're spec cars. What are people going to work on? You have to realize that these practice days are essentially marketing days. They're marketing and hot dog days, right? So my suggestion would be, since you're already having most of the field show up for the test in April, and it's so close anyway to May these days, and I guess they sometimes test different compounds of Firestone tires there, but my opinion would be, take those 2 days that you have for testing anyway, where 30 cars show up anyway, and move them to the week before what I would call pole weekend, and have cars on track, charge admission, sell some hot dogs, and actually have people be able to come into the grounds and watch this session, because I think it would be quite a good show. So what I would do on pole weekend is essentially just have the Fast 9 shootout, and that's it. Do it on Saturday, or have actually what I would do is I would have the Saturday be the bump to get in the Fast 9, and then Sunday would be the Fast 9 shootout, plus let's add like a concert or something. Try to get a Carb Day atmosphere for that. So you roll off at noon for the pole shootout, and then you have a concert for the rest of the people who decided to show up and really didn't care all that much about the racing. And I would hope that would alleviate some of the two-line thing we've seen quite a bit over the bump days over the years where there's some congestion in the lines. Now you would only lock in the top 9 the first weekend. Then you would have a traditional. You would take Monday off, and then you would start practice on Tuesday and have a traditional week of May, as the rest of the teams going for the rest of the field would join up and run for the bump day weekend, which would be the first day would be kind of traditional as we've come to know it, which would be positions 10 through 30, and then you'd have the last row shootout and another concert on the Sunday. I don't know. That's how I would do it. I hope I've put up some sort of a graphic on the screen to kind of show you or illustrate what this kind of month of May would look like. But then, of course, you'd have the Indianapolis 500. Nothing needs to change about that. We don't even need to go into that particular race because I think it's okay. The next change I would make is, and I get it, I'm a boomer, let's go to Milwaukee. We've already got a week off between Detroit and Indianapolis. Let's just fill it. Let's fill it with an oval track. Let's fill it with a traditional venue. And I know everybody makes the argument, well, no one showed up there in 2015. But when you run at 5 o'clock on a Sunday in the Midwest, and people can't reasonably drive between Indianapolis and Milwaukee and get to work in the morning, I think that was a bad example of a race. I think if you put that in the traditional date, I think it would be okay. I think it would work. And you also may notice that I haven't mentioned a T word yet, because traditionally, and it's not that T word, we talk about Texas after the Indianapolis 500, or before this year. I decided to leave Texas off the schedule. And the reason I decided that was because it seems like Texas has doubled and tripled down on their PJ1 allocation on the track. There's virtually no spot on the track that doesn't have PJ1 anymore. And despite all their efforts to wash the track off, I'm sure that will affect the racing next year. I think Indy cars are probably better off leaving Texas behind until they decide that PJ1 is no longer a viable solution for the stock cars. The other problem, of course, is Eddie Gossage leaving. A lot of people talked about how Eddie Gossage is one of the biggest proponents of IndyCar racing in Texas. Now that he's gone, you've lost an ally. I think it's probably a lost cause. Then we go on to the double in Detroit. This is a race that's grown on me, an event that's grown on me. I think it's a unique event in that a double header actually works and enhances the event rather than takes away from it. I think the double headers for every race but Detroit actually detract from the event. Then we go on to Road America. No big surprise there. That's a great event and gets a big crowd. Even if you added Milwaukee, I don't think it would matter. You race in Indianapolis. You're going to race in Indianapolis 3 times this year, people. It's okay. We can run 2 races in Wisconsin. I bet they can handle it. Then we're going to go on to Iowa. Now, this has actually been talked about that Iowa is apparently in the process of being saved by Bobby Rahal and the Hy-Vee supermarket chain. And I didn't originally have Iowa on the schedule. I had Texas on it. But as soon as I heard Iowa potentially would be saved, I said, screw Texas, they're gone. Let's add Iowa back to the schedule because I know that it would be a better race. It's a more exciting race. I think Iowa Speedway is a much more unique track in the sense that it produces such interesting racing for Indy cars. I think it deserves to be there, and the fact that it's not on the schedule this year is a damn tragedy. Toronto, this is another one that almost got cut, and the reason it almost got cut is because I'm not sure it's going to be viable by the time they get back to 2022. We're going to have to see, and I know that Canadian race fans would hate me if I took it off of there for this year or for 2022, but we're going to have to see going forward. Obviously, that event got canceled for this year, got canceled last year. It will have been 3 years by the time 2022 comes around that there's been a Toronto race. It stays on the schedule, but it just stays in a provisional space. I feel like in some ways Toronto is moving on from IndyCar racing. That's disappointing, but I'm sure at some point they're going to build a hotel over the track and the event's going to end that way rather than perhaps going out on its own terms. Mid-Ohio, nothing much to mention here. As much as I'd like to say, let's do it at Burke Lake Front Airport, Mid-Ohio is fine. This is a different take, and this is one I've heard from no one, but I think Indy cars need to be on the East Coast again of the United States. How do you do that? Well, we could go Pocono, but I decided to let bygones be bygones on that one for at least 1 year and say we don't have to return to Pocono yet, but let's return to New Hampshire and enhance an idea that will be tested at the Indianapolis Motor Speedway this year. Do a doubleheader with NASCAR. Now, NASCAR hasn't had the greatest crowds at New Hampshire. They have had some decent crowds, but I think this would enhance the event significantly to have what IndyCar considers a short oval. I don't know if the Cup guys consider New Hampshire to be a short oval, but have short track IndyCar racing, stock cars, East Coast. Try to build that event and do it at a unique facility like New Hampshire. Now, I know a lot of people are going to say, well, they use PJ1 at New Hampshire. Well, we'd have to take a look at that. But I think if you're going to get an East Coast race, you're going to have to be creative about getting people to come out for it. Make it an event. Make it something people will want to buy a ticket to. A doubleheader with NASCAR at New Hampshire is my solution to that problem. Nashville Street Circuit, seems like that event's probably going to be a great success, at least from a financial and interest perspective. So that'll stay. Gateway stays. Portland stays. Laguna Seca stays. Nothing really to say about any of those events. I considered making Gateway the season finale, but the problem is right now the IndyCar short track racing, at least at Gateway, just isn't up to snuff. They're going to have to work on that, and I think Laguna Seca, generally speaking, would be a better show. So that's my 17-race IndyCar Series season for 2022. Of course, it's a fantasy, but fantasies are fun sometimes. So let me know what you think about that down in the comments section below. Check out Felix Gray Glasses while you're down there in that description, and then write a comment to me about what you think about this schedule. Thank you guys so much for watching. This has been David Land on YouTube, and I'll see you in the next video.